Hello, welcome to the audiobook of my Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's fanfic Crimson Star Priestess. If you're enjoying the series, make sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe to my channel to keep up with the updates. The link to the fanfic is in the description below. I do not own any Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D characters. I only own my OCs.
Yusei and I got arrested for trespassing in the Kaiba Dome and for entering New Domino City from the satellite without a permit. When we arrived to Sector Security HQ, the two of us were thrown into separate cells to await the judge who would sentence us in the morning. Just as I had suspected, Sector Security did not only confiscate Yusei's door runner and his deck during the arrest, but they also took my satchel. Luckily, the officers didn't frisk me to look for hidden items. At the HQ, they demanded me to empty my pockets. All I had in my jacket pocket were some clean paper tissues, which I could keep to blow my nose. I had been sleeping a bit restlessly in the cell for the rest of the night, so I was very tired in the early morning when an officer entered my cell with a plate of simple breakfast. What was going to happen to Yusei? To me? Was I going to get a criminal mark? I heard from Raleigh how he got his mark. He told me Sector Security had used a laser that hurt like hell when they marked him, and how that small mark contained information of his identity and a homing signal. What would the Sector Security do when they would find my ID card that I still had in my satchel? I technically didn't exist in this dimension, so there was no information about me. I could barely eat my breakfast due to my nervous stomach while I was thinking about my fate. What would Goodwin do once he was informed about me? More questions appeared in my head as I recalled the moment when the Crimson Dragon showed up in the Kaiba Dome. I knew I felt my eyes burn when the Dragon God appeared, and I knew I wasn't hallucinating when I felt a burning pain on my right arm. I had seen that pentagram mark on the arm before it vanished, just like Yusei's mark. Was it possible that I was a signer as well? If so, then what kind of mark did I receive from the Crimson Dragon? I couldn't recall reading an article on the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia about the mark that had the shape of a pentagram. And why did the signer dragons call me priestess when I met them? What the heck was going on? I sat in my office and looked through all the paperwork that needed to be done this morning. I had to sign a contract of allowing the judge to sentence and mark Yusei. While I was doing that, I couldn't help but think about the boy's female companion. I could have sworn I saw her eyes glowing red when the Crimson Dragon appeared in the stadium, and something had been glowing on her mark before we lost the footage due to the blackout. I didn't look up when I heard the door to my office slide open before footsteps approached the desk. "Director Goodwin, sir," the officer called. "Yes, what is it?" I asked as I signed the sentence contract. "We have some issues identifying Fudo Yusei's female friend." The pen I had in my hand stopped in its tracks. I looked up and saw Officer Kaz was standing in front of the desk with an uncertain expression. He held a metal box in his hands, which made me raise an eyebrow in confusion. "What kind of issue?" I questioned. After inspecting the girl's bag, we were able to find an ID card, but Officer Kaz began before holding said ID card to me. "Please take a look yourself, sir." I put down the pen and grabbed the card from the officer before taking a closer look. My eyebrow raised in surprise when I saw many flaws on it. It didn't look like a common national identity card. It had the wrong layout, but the thing that caught my attention was the girl's date of birth. The card said she was born in 1997, which was extremely odd. The current year was 2030, and the girl seemed to be no older than 20. The year's not right, I said. That's what bothered us, sir, Officer Cass explained. None of us believe someone can live for so long and still look so young, unless they are sorcerers. I looked at the other details of the card and spotted the girl's name. Estelle Malmström. It certainly didn't sound like a Japanese name, and it wasn't because the ID card said Estelle's nationality was Swedish. Have you contacted the Swedish police department? I asked. We did, but they couldn't find any records of the suspect, Officer Cass replied. I looked at the picture of her on the ID card. Her eyes shone with intelligence and a hidden strength. Could it be possible she was the one who I thought she was? Was she the chosen one of the Crimson Dragon? The one who carried the mark of the Crimson Star? Sir, we were also able to find a deck among the suspect's belongings and she has 2 cards that raised more questions about her identity, Officer Cass added. I looked up from the card as I put it down on the desk. What do you mean? Officer Cass put down the metal box before opening it and pulled out the deck. I took it from him and looked through the deck. My hands stopped moving when I came across not just 1, but 2 cards of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Blue Eyes White Dragon? I mumbled in slight disbelief. Yes, sir. If I recall correctly, the famous CEO, Seto Kaiba, used to have 3 cards of Blue Eyes White Dragon, but Kaiba vanished years ago with his dragons. Yes, that is absolutely correct, I nodded. An incorrect ID card and 2 cards of the mythical Blue Eyes White Dragons. This girl was full of mystery, but I had a feeling she wouldn't tell me anything if I were to interrogate her. What should we do with her, Director Goodwin? Officer Cass asked, making me snap out of my thoughts. I put down the cards on my desk before resting my elbows on it and intertwined my fingers. Until we can figure out her true identity, she is to wear an ankle monitor. Do not mark her until we're certain of who she is. Yes, sir, Officer Cass saluted. And another thing, I spoke up. Escort Estelle to my office. So she shouldn't be sent to the facility with the other convicted females this morning? I want to see her in person. I'll make a decision about the next course of action after I have a brief interrogation with her. After the officer gathered Estelle's deck and ID card, he left my office with a salute. As soon as the door closed, I turned around in my seat and stood up to look out of the windows, viewing New Domino City. Estelle Malmström, who are you? I sat at the edge of the bed in my cell and was a bit bored, but mostly worried about Yusei. I had seen his silhouette when he walked past the cell with 2 security officers about an hour ago, and I hadn't seen or heard from him ever since. My heart beat in fear. Did he get sent to the facility without me? Did this mean I was on my own because Sector Security couldn't identify me? I patted my chest to check if I still had the 2 cards I had hidden before the Crimson Dragon appeared. I could feel the shape of the cards against my chest, so it was a relief they were still there. I looked up when I heard the electric lock of the cell door beeping before it was opened by an officer. I raised an eyebrow when I recognized who it was. It was Officer Cass, the same Cass who got hurt in the anime when he came to the episode of Sid and his gang stealing expensive door runners. I never thought I would see him already. Cass approached me with an ankle monitor in his hand. Miss, due to special orders, you will not be marked, but you will wear this ankle monitor. Special orders, huh? I guess Sector Security and Goodwin really couldn't identify me, and instead of marking me, they would watch over me with that ankle monitor. Fair enough. Which ankle? I asked as I pulled up my right leg to zip open my boot. The left one, Kaz replied. I switched leg and pulled the zipper down of my left boot before pulling it off. Kaz kneeled down as I stretched my leg to make it easier for him to strap on the ankle monitor. Yes, I could use the chance to fight against him and try to escape, but it would only escalate things. Besides, it would take seconds for other officers to catch me if I tried to run away. I couldn't do that. Besides, Yusei needed me. I had to be there for him. Kaz adjusted the ankle monitor, which was thin and light, before he gave me a nod that told me that I could put on my boot again. I could easily pull it on me without any trouble with the device and zipped the boot shut. What's going to happen to me and my friend, officer? I questioned politely. Your companion, Fudu Yusei, will be transported to the facility to undergo a 1-month re-education program before you two are shipped off to the satellite, Kaz replied as he checked an iPhone-like device for the details. As for you, Director Goodwin asked me to escort you to his office. I blinked my eyes in surprise. I wasn't going to be sent to the female facility straight away? And why did Goodwin want to see me? Was it because he wasn't able to verify my identity? Before meeting Goodwin, I had to see Yusei. Is my friend still here in Sector Security? Yes, Kaz nodded. Can I see him before he has to leave for the facility? I requested. Kaz looked at me as if I had grown a second head, but then he nodded with a poker face. I stood up from the bed and followed Kaz out of the cell calmly. I walked behind him to another cell when he used a keycard to unlock the door. He then pulled the door open and stepped aside so I could walk in. Yusei sat at the edge of the bed in the cell with his elbows on his lap, his chin resting on his intertwined hands and eyes closed. He didn't look up when I approached him. I heard the door closing behind me, but I didn't care about that. All I cared about now was Yusei. He didn't even flinch when I sat down next to him. I could see his criminal mark, and it pained me to know that he got hurt when they marked him. I sat there silently for a couple of minutes before I slowly wrapped my right arm around Yusei's shoulders. Even then he didn't react to my touch. Yusei? I whispered. He opened his eyes, but he never turned his head to look at me. I didn't know if he was angry by the fact that he got caught and marked, or if he was thinking about last night's event with the Crimson Dragon. I could only guess it was a bit of both. I snapped out when Yusei moved his shoulders a bit. I removed my arm and let him stretch his back. Yusei, are you okay? I asked softly. Yusei let out a sigh before he turned to me. His eyes seemed to study my face before he frowned. Why didn't you get a mark? He asked. I shrugged my shoulders. I don't know. Apparently, due to some special orders, Sector Security strapped an ankle monitor onto my left leg instead, and Goodwin wants to see me. Yusei raised an eyebrow. Why does he want to see you? I shrugged softly. I don't know. I was never given an explanation. Yusei stayed silent and looked away. It hurt a bit that it wasn't the same, but I partly couldn't blame him. We both got caught by Sector Security, and Yusei could be sent to the facility any minute now. Me too, if that was what Goodwin planned to do after seeing me. It was a lot for the brain to comprehend. I snapped my head up when the door to the cell opened again, but it was another officer instead of Kaz. Get out, you two! Young man, your limousine to the facility will leave soon, the officer demanded. And girl, your escort is waiting for you. I turned to Yusei to see how he was reacting. He was nonchalant as he stood up from the bed and headed to the door. I quickly followed him out of the cell. The unknown officer had a colleague with him so they could escort Yusei to the transportation vehicle while making sure he wouldn't try to run. Kaz had waited for me, but he didn't have a colleague that would watch me from behind. I guess he knew that I was smart enough not to try run away. "Follow me," Cass said briefly before he walked off. I cast a glance over my shoulder to see Yusei vanish by a corner. My shoulders sank a bit as I let out a soft sigh. I hoped he would be okay in the facility. As Cass and I walked down the long corridor, I noticed there were many guards walking around with rifles. The security was sure not lacking, to say the least. I got into an elevator with Cass that took us up to the top floor. I remained silent and watched every single move the officer made. I snapped my head up when the elevator chimed for reaching the top floor. Cass and I stepped out and we walked a long corridor until we made it to a door. It slid open and revealed a big and bright room. There were huge windows in front of a desk where Goodwin sat and did paperwork. He didn't look up when Cass stepped over to his desk and saluted him. The director only looked up when he was done writing on the paper sheet in front of him and put aside both the pen and paper sheet. "Thank you, officer," Goodwin nodded. "You may leave." Cass just nodded as answer before stepping out of the office, leaving me alone with Goodwin. I had to be honest, I was both a bit nervous and scared to be in a room with the man in front of me. I knew he could get violent if someone said something he didn't like to hear. I didn't want to face his wrath. I turned my eyes aside when I spotted my satchel on a table not so far from me. So the director had brought my stuff, so that meant something was up. I stood still as Goodwin's eyes studied me from head to toe before he straightened his back. "So, I assume you wonder why I've asked you to see me," he began. "Yes, sir," I said with a monotone voice. One of the corners of Goodwin's lips seemed to twitch for a second, but I could have just imagined it. "Sector Security has a hard time identifying you, but I assume your first name is Estelle, correct?" he continued as he held up my ID. "Yes, sir," I nodded. Goodwin set down the ID before he stood up from his chair and turned around to look out the windows, his back facing me, but I could see the reflection of his eyes on the glass. "And your last name is Malmström?" "Yes." Goodwin turned around and stared at me with an intense glance. "Then how come I found 2 copies of Seto Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragons in your deck? Kaiba vanished more than 20 years ago along with his 3 dragons, and records are saying he never had children." His lips turned into a thin line. "Are you, by any chance, a Kaiba?" "No, sir, I am not," I replied while shaking my head. "If not, how do you have the cards?" I stayed silent after that question. I refused to tell Goodwin the truth of how I came over the 2 Blue Eyes White Dragon cards. I knew the Blue Eyes White Dragon was one of the rarest cards in the anime universe, but it was more of a common card in my world that everyone could obtain. Goodwin stared at me for a moment before he walked back to his desk and picked up my ID. "I had a feeling you wouldn't cooperate with me so easily. Since Sector Security is unable to identify you, I've decided to put you under house arrest." I blinked my eyes in surprise when I heard that. I wasn't going to get sent to the female facility? "Here in Sector Security, sir?" "No, in my residence." That was certainly an unexpected turn of events. Instead of being thrown in jail, I was going to live in Goodwin's mansion. While his limousine drove us to his private island, he told me briefly that I could walk around the island but never leave the area. Everything was going to be provided to me: food, clothes, entertainment, and other stuff I could request. Mates were going to look after me and make sure I was going to behave. The limousine stopped in front of the mansion where a maid was waiting. The driver of the limousine stepped out to open the door for me. I got out of the vehicle while carrying my satchel, but I quickly realized Goodwin stayed in the limousine. "Sir?" I said, blinking my eyes. "I have some business to do the entire day," Goodwin explained, answering the question I had in my head. "But I shall see you in the evening. Until then, take care, Estelle." The driver closed the door and walked back to the front of the vehicle before getting into it and drove off. I watched the limousine leave until it had vanished. I let out a soft sigh and turned to the maid, who was around 30 years old, had black hair tied into a bun, brown eyes, fair skin, and dressed in a long-skirt maid outfit. "Welcome, Miss Estelle," the maid bowed slightly. "My name is Hilda, the head maid." "Hello," I replied softly. Hilda raised her head up with a small smile. "I've been informed about the circumstances. My girls and I will take care of you. Your room has already been prepared if you would like to rest and change your clothes. Please follow me." I was a bit nervous as I followed Hilda into the mansion. The other maids and a few butlers stared at me while the women gossiped around me. I could hear the term satellite multiple times, and that was said with a poisonous tone. I had a feeling I was going to get bullied in secret for a while, but that was something I just had to deal with. Maybe the staff would realize I wasn't as bad as they first suspected and then leave me alone. Hilda opened the door to my assigned bedroom. It was 3 times bigger than my room in my dimension. It had beige walls and dark red marble flooring and huge windows that had a gorgeous view of the rose garden and the lake around Goodwin's Island. There was a queen bed in a corner with a white nightstand and several white wardrobes next to it. There were oak bookshelves at the other side of the room and an oak desk with pens and other stuff. In the middle of the room were a Victorian coffee table with 2 couches on each side and 1 chair each by the heads. It felt a bit extravagant for someone from the satellite who was under house arrest for trespassing New Domino City. I wasn't ungrateful to live in a safe place, but a decent house would have been much better than this castle. The first 2 weeks passed by quickly, and before I knew it, it was July. Yusei's birthday had passed, but I haven't been able to celebrate it with him. Goodwin rarely came home to the mansion, and when he did, we would have dinner together. He did try to lure information out of me, but I kept my mouth shut. Other than that, when it came to other topics, we actually had a nice time, like father and daughter. As I suspected at the beginning, the maids and butlers were a bit mean, but they slowly stopped messing around when they noticed I didn't do any bad stuff, like trying to steal some valuable stuff or vandalize things or being basically mean. In fact, when I started talking to them and asking questions or even help out in the kitchen, they started speaking to me in a respectful way. I was glad to see they had a change of heart, and some even began questioning if the people from the satellite were really as bad as the rumors said. I mostly kept myself in the bedroom to read books and write stuff in notebooks I was provided with. I did spend some time in the living room or in the garden, but I felt safest in the room. I would have tea and snacks and have a small chat with the maid that came with the afternoon tea. The clothes I wore were mainly feminine and I liked them, so I changed clothes every day to experience the feeling of wearing something nice, elegant, and expensive. I knew I sounded like I was getting spoiled and I was having my own fashion show, but what else could I come up with while I was under house arrest? My options for activities were very limited. I would sometimes wander off in my mind and think about my parents in my dimension. Was the time going in the same pace in both worlds? If so, did this mean I was now a missing person in my world? Were my parents looking for me? Were they thinking that I got snatched by people in the human trafficking and sold me as a slave? I wished there was some way to contact them and tell them I was okay. During the nights, I had several encounters with the Crimson Dragon in my dreams. He explained to me that I was the chosen one to carry the mark of the Crimson Star, meaning the Dragon Star. My duty was apparently to mother the signers and be there for them when they needed a shoulder to rely on. I often heard how the maids, especially the young ones, adored Jack and how he was the true champion and hero of New Domino City. Each one of them wanted to become his lover, so every time Jack came over to Goodwin's mansion, they would try to keep their compose, but a few of them would secretly sneak a note with their contact address into one of the blonde's pockets without him noticing. I wasn't really the type to be a fangirl, and I didn't see Jack with the same eyes as the others. I always made sure to stay out of sight whenever Jack came over, but one day I didn't have the same luck. Today I was dressed in a black chiffred off-shoulder top, blue-gray and black tweed-fronted shorts, white socks, and black ballet flats. The black straps of my bra were shown, but it looked like as if they were worn with the top. I was in the living room sitting in an armchair and reading a book that had caught my attention. Katsumi, one of the maids and Jack's fangirls, stood by a corner and made sure to stay there and watch over me. I was so deep into the book that I almost dropped it when the door to the living room opened. I looked up and saw Goodwin step into the room and, to my discomfort, Jack was right behind him. Master Goodwin, Katsumi bowed immediately to hide her deep blush from Jack. Mr. Atlas. Goodwin nodded to the maid before he turned his eyes on me. Estelle, I need you to do me a favor. I put the bookmark in the book and closed it before getting up from the armchair and walked over to the men. What kind of favor, Goodwin? I want to see your skills, so will you duel Jack Atlas, the king of games? Jack snorted loudly and made a grimace as he glared at me. I can't believe you've been hiding Yusu's girlfriend in your own house like a pet this entire time. Charming, I retorted sarcastically with a glare at Jack before turning to Goodwin with a neutral expression. Why would you want me to duel Jack, sir? The fortune cup is coming up, and Jack is constantly turbo-dueling, Goodwin explained. So I feel like he needs a change. Besides, it is also a nice warm-up if we need to have a ground duel instead of a turbo duel at the very final of the fortune cup. Are you doubting my skills, Goodwin? Jack nearly growled aggressively at the director. I never implied that, Jack. But you have to admit it's been a long time since you had a ground duel. Jack held back a growl, but collected himself and looked away with his arms crossed. She can't be that good of a duelist. She looks more like a loser. Be careful with your words, Jack, I said simply before nodding to Goodwin. It's been a while since I had my last duel, so it would be a nice change for me as well. Excellent, Goodwin nodded, his poker face still remaining on his face. I'll have a duel disc prepared for you. I received a standard duel disc, but its color scheme was crystal blue and white with sea blue gems. Blue wasn't really the color that fit me, but I could deal with the device. Goodwin led me and Jack to one of the duel fields outside of the mansion. I also got to meet Mina Symington for the first time. She walked behind us, but she kept trying to get close to Jack while literally making holes on his back with her deep stare. Jack and I stood on each side of the field while Goodwin, Mina, Hilda, and a few other people of Goodwin's staff stood aside to watch. Both Jack and I raised our left arms with the duel disc and activated them. The duel disc shuffled my deck. Let's duel! Jack commenced the duel, both of us drawing the top 5 cards of our decks. And don't think I'll go easy on you just 'cause you're a woman. I got 1-for-1, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Arc Brave Dragon, Enemy Controller, and Dragon Knight of Creation. A decent hand for a start. The king always goes first, Jack called. I draw, and I start by special summoning Powered Giant to the field by sending Synchro Soldier from my hand to the graveyard. While doing that, Powered Giant's level is lowered by 1 due to Synchro Soldier's level. A Gundam-like monster that looked like its body was made entirely by different gems appeared on the field, punching the air. Jack surely liked to go strong even at the beginning of a duel. Next, I place 1 card face down and end my turn. You're up, girl. Jack finished as a face down trap card appeared on his field. I draw, I called as I drew my 6th card, seeing it was Silver's Cry. I start my turn by summoning Dragon Knight of Creation in attack mode. Dragon Knight of Creation jumped out from a gate and drew his sword, ready to fight. Next, I play the spell 1-for-1. I send 1 monster card from my hand to summon a level 1 monster from my deck. I continued as I discarded Blue Eyes White Dragon's card to the graveyard, while my dual disc shuffled the deck until it was done, and I grabbed the top card and put it on the device. And I chose the tuna monster Supai. The wood-like monster floated out from a gate and stayed next to my first monster. Let me guess, a synchro summoning, Jack snorted. That's right, I nodded. I tuned Supai with Dragon Knight of Creation to synchro summon Magical Android. Supai turned into a tuning circle in which my dragon monster jumped into before turning into a bright light. Once the light died down, Magical Android was on the field, looking ready to battle. Magical Android, take out Power Giant! I shouted. Magical Android raised her sword and sent a fireball towards the rock monster. It looked like it was going to work, but... I activate my trap! Prideful Roar! Jack called as his face-down card flipped up. Now, by paying 200 life points, my Power Giant's attack points increase by 200 and he gains an additional 300 attack points, making him stronger than your magical android. A red aura surrounded Jack to show some of his life points got drained, but the aura was then transferred to Power Giant, who moved his arms as if trying to show off his muscles. The rock monster punched the fireball, causing the flames to spread all around him before he dashed forward with a hand clenched into a fist. Magical Android gasped when the Gundam monster was in front of her. Power Giant threw his fist and punched her so hard she shattered into pieces. Some of the mates cheered excitedly at Jack for making a brilliant comeback, while Goodwin and the others remained calm and silent. I place 1 card face down and end my turn, I said as I put enemy controller face down while Power Giant's attack points returned to normal. I told you I wasn't gonna go easy on you, Jack snorted as he drew a card. I summon Dark Resonator. One of his Resonator monsters floated out of a gate and grinned mischievously. I knew what this meant, and by judging the fangirl mate's excited cries, Jack was bringing out the big gun now. And with Dark Resonator, I tune in with Power Giant to synchro summon your doom, the blonde man continued. Dark Resonator used his tuning fork and tool to create a noise before turning into 3 tuning rings. Power Giant jumped into the rings before an inferno erupted on the field. I synchro summon Red Dragon Archfiend! The black and red Signer Dragon flew out from the flames and roared to the sky before settling down behind Jack. Next, I activate Scarlet Security, Jack continued as said spell card appeared on the field. I can only use this when I have Red Dragon Archfiend on the field, and with his power, I can destroy all your spell and trap cards." Red Dragon Archfiend flew up before diving towards my single face down and used his clenched fist to destroy it. The dirt flew around me due to the impact in front of me. I shielded my eyes from the dirt until the commotion had calmed down. When I opened my eyes, I jumped back as I was face to face with the Signer Dragon. "Now, Red Dragon Archfiend, obliterate her life points," Jack commanded. Red Dragon Archfiend flapped his wings and flew up to the air before unleashing a flamethrower from his mouth at me. I shielded my face from the fire with the duodisc as I took the damage. Jack stood tall and emitted an aura of pride as Red Dragon Archfiend settled down behind him. "I'll end my turn, and I promise I'll make my next turn quick." Jack really went all on power for the duels, but I wasn't going to give up so easily. "I draw," I called as I drew my new card, seeing it was Wise Dragon. I played the quick play spell Silver's Cry. Said card appeared on the field. With the power of this card, I can summon a normal monster from my graveyard. "But you don't have a normal monster." "Unless the one you sent when you played 1-for-1, Jack retorted. I picked up Blue Eyes White Dragon's card from the graveyard and slammed it on the duodisc. And that monster is Blue Eyes White Dragon. A bright blue energy shot itself out of a gate and flew to the sky, where it shape-shifted itself into Blue Eyes White Dragon. He roared to the sky before he settled down behind me. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief, and I could hear shocking gasps from the audience. "How can you have Seto Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragon?" the blonde man asked irritably. I ignored Jack's question as I decided to skip the battle phase. If I had Blue Eyes attacking Red Dragon Archfiend, both dragons would end up in the graveyard. I didn't want to lose my dragon. I end my turn. "Hey, don't ignore my question," Jack yelled angrily. "Jack," Goodwin called, getting both our attention. "Don't lose your focus." The blonde signer held back a growl as he drew a card to commence his turn. "I play Red Dragon Vase." The card appeared on the field before the vase of the artwork replaced it. Because I have Red Dragon Archfiend, I can harness his power to draw 2 more cards, but I can summon any monsters for this turn and until the end of your next turn. The Red Dragon Vase released a fiery aura that enveloped Jack as he drew 2 more cards. The vase then shattered into pieces after fulfilling its purpose. I placed 3 cards face down and end my turn, Jack continued while 3 face down cards appeared on his field. I raised an eyebrow confusedly. He chose not to attack me? Was he waiting for me to attack him or something? "I draw," I called as I drew Paladin of Felgrand, and I summoned Paladin of Felgrand in attack mode. The warrior jumped out from a gate and swung his sword around before standing in front of me. Some of the mates turned their attention at Paladin because they thought he looked handsome and cute at the same time. When Paladin of Felgrand is summoned, I can equip a level 7 or level 8 dragon monster from my hand or deck, so I equip him with Archbrave Dragon from my hand. I placed the Dragon Monster card on the spell/trap card zone, just as the Golden Dragon appeared on the field. While Paladin is equipped with a card, he is unaffected by other monsters' effects. Archbrave Dragon glowed in a golden aura that was transferred to Paladin, who absorbed the aura with his sword. Now I decided to go forward and let my dragon battle the Signer Dragon. "Blue Eyes White Dragon, attack Red Dragon Archfiend! Take him with you to the graveyard!" Blue Eyes White Dragon roared before he took off to the sky. Red Dragon Archfiend flapped his wings and flew after the Sky Blue Dragon. My dragon charged toward the Black Dragon with a roar, while collecting energy in his mouth, while Red Dragon Archfiend's mouth started burning for a flamethrower. "Not a chance," Jack suddenly called. I activate Nightmare Archfiends. One of his face downs flipped up. I sacrifice Red Dragon Archfiend to summon 3 Nightmare Archfiend tokens to your side of the field. The Signer Dragon's mouth stopped burning before he vanished, only for his remains to head over to my side of the field. The remaining energy transformed into 3 tokens that looked like human-sized fiends with black bodies and tails, white hair, and red eyes and mouths. I cold sweated when I remembered what kind of effects these fiends had. I would deal with 800 points of damage for each one destroyed. I had to get rid of them fast, but the battle phase was still going on. I don't know why you did this sacrifice, Jack, because Blue Eyes White Dragon will now attack you directly instead, I pointed out. Not if I activate my second trap, no entry, Jack responded as said trap card flipped up. All monsters in attack mode are switched to defense mode. Blue Eyes White Dragon stopped charging energy and got down on the ground before lowering his neck and moved his wings to shield his head. Paladin got down on one knee while still holding his sword, and the 3 tokens just changed their black skin color into a dark blue color. I growled inwardly, really getting into the duel. I never expected Jack to pull off such a move. Besides, now that I thought about it, I didn't recall him having no entry in any of his decks in the anime. Was this a change or something? I end my turn, I said, knowing I was going to lose. Jack snorted loudly as he drew a new card. I told you I was going to make this duel quick, so I activate my third trap, Call of the Haunted. I can summon a monster from my graveyard to the field, so come back, my burning soul, Red Dragon Archfiend. The final trap card flipped up before it unleashed a huge inferno. Red Dragon Archfiend raised from the flames and roared in joy that he was back on the field. This is it, I mumbled softly. Get ready to face your demise, girl, Jack yelled. Red Dragon Archfiend, attack Paladin of Felgrad. Go, absolute power force! The Signer Dragon clenched his right clawed hand into a fist and flew towards Paladin while the fist got enveloped by a fiery aura. Paladin of Felgrand had no chance as he was hit and got destroyed along with Archbrave Dragon. And because Red Dragon Archfiend attacked a defense position monster, the rest of your defense position monsters are destroyed, Jack added. And when the Nightmare Archfiend tokens are destroyed, you take 800 points of damage for each one of them. Red Dragon Archfiend breathed his crimson fire at Blue Eyes White Dragon and the 3 tokens and destroyed them at the same time. The tokens exploded at the same time and created a thick smoke around me as I took the final damage. Jack's fangirls shrieked in joy to see he had won with his Red Dragon Archfiend. The dual feed returned to normal after the dual disc deactivated themselves. I didn't know why, but I felt a bit disappointed at myself. I only realized afterwards that I had made some mistakes and overlooked some parts. Such a disappointment, Jack's chilly voice spoke up, snapping me out of my thoughts as he walked past me with his nose up in the air. I've dueled many duelists, but you're literally the worst opponent ever. So pathetic. And you even had the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but you couldn't control it like a real master. I turned around to watch him walk when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. In fact, he turned around so harshly that his trench coat flew around him. You should just hand it over to me. Excuse me, I exclaimed in disbelief. You heard me. Hand it over right now. Jack walked back to me while reaching for my dual disc. I backed away from him, trying not to let him get my Blue Eyes White Dragon card while trying to push him back with my right hand. Stop it! Just because you're the king of games doesn't mean you can take other people's cards. I can and I will, Jack retorted as he managed to grab my dual disc, pulling it towards him while forcing my body to lean forward, almost making me drop down on my knees. "Jack!" Mina called with a worried voice. "Jack Atlas, let go of Esther immediately!" Goodwin called with a harsh voice, making Jack freeze in his movement. "Your actions toward her are unacceptable." "So what? She's just some trash from the satellite," Jack retorted as he had his full attention at the director. While Jack was distracted, I karate chopped his hand that was on the door disc, making him yelp in pain and lighten up his hold on the device before pushing him back. I ran over to Goodwin and hid behind him, knowing he wouldn't let Jack make such a low action in front of so many people, especially since he had some fans here. He was literally the one who could keep the blonde signer in check. "You should never put your hands on a woman, whether she's from New Domino or the satellite, Jack," Goodwin spoke with a calm voice, but I could sense the hints of seriousness. "Besides, the Blue Eyes White Dragon belongs to her, so don't take it from her with force." "Well, then how can she have that card?" Jack growled. "That's Seto Kaiba's signature monster. Is she a Kaiba?" "I'm not," I spoke up, answering the question. "Then why do you have it?" Jack yelled aggressively. "That's enough, Jack," Goodwin intervened. The blonde signer growled through gritted teeth and slowly calmed down, but his shoulders were still tense. "Now, Jack, you have a duel this evening, so go home and prepare for it," Goodwin told him. "It would look bad for your image if you don't put all your attention on that duel. Go and clear your mind." Jack opened his mouth to argue, but a strict glare from the director made him shut up. His irritated expression didn't fade though when he walked past us, each step full of anger. Mina looked a bit disoriented at first, before she collected herself and bowed to Goodwin before running after Jack, who took off with the stew runner. She got into a car and drove after him. Once the white door runner was out of sight, I finally relaxed my shoulders and let out a huge sigh of relief. "Thank you, Goodwin." "Why are you thanking me, Estelle?" the director responded. "For protecting me from Jack. I got really scared when I thought he would take my blue eyes from me." "That was highly inappropriate of him. He should have known better," Goodwin replied calmly. "While I am a bit disappointed the duel didn't last longer than that, I'm glad I got to see Blue Eyes White Dragon in action." Once he mentioned Blue Eyes, his staff of maids and butlers began gossiping between each other. Some cast questioning glances as if trying to figure out if I was a secret Kaiba or how I obtained the dragon. "I believe you are much stronger than what you showed us today," Goodwin continued as he turned to me. "Dueling is all about skills, but also an inch of luck. You simply didn't have a good hand this time." Without any warning, he reached his hand up and patted my head. "So don't feel down by this loss." This gesture came out of the blue from Goodwin, if you ask me. It was like he was treating me like a child, but not just any child. He was treating me as if I was his daughter. Was it possible he had a deep wish to have a child of his own? If so, why did he never have a wife? I had heard from the maids that Goodwin had many female celebrity friends who went with him as a date on a sophistical parties in the past, but nothing escalated from those dates. A weird theory appeared in my head. What if Goodwin brought me to his mansion, not just to watch over me and get answers from me, but also have an opportunity to experience the fatherhood? Didn't he do the same thing with Jack too when the blonde signer came to New Domino City to accept the offer the director gave him 2 years ago? This was getting very confusing, so I dropped those thoughts and followed Goodwin back to the mansion.